What's going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's our weekly live stream where we talk about news, current events, open it up to esoteric ideas, as well as our movie review. With me, as ever, is the homeboy Rob.
What's going on, everybody?
Lots going on. Especially as we're kind of winding things down here in the Circle of Jerks podcast. We'll be shortly going on our, I guess this year is 3 weeks, but our winter break.
Yes.
So this month it's an abbreviated schedule. So after this stream, there's only going to be one more stream for this year, and then we'll see y'all in the new year.
Exactly, and I think I chose a good dual movie, or a good double bill for us with The Conversation and Enemy of the State, which I think are connected.
Well, I mean, not least of which is because both movies star the legendary Gene Hackman, and the two movies kind of revolve around similar themes or motifs. So
but man, I'm looking forward to talking about The Conversation. I rewatched it this past week, and I think I enjoyed it more this time around than I did last time. Because last time I watched it was for like the first time, and I was like, I liked it, but there was a lot going on, so it took a sec. Maybe it hadn't washed over me yet, and I watched it again this time. I'm like, okay, I see why this is a classic. I see why people really talk very highly of this film. And it's such a especially coming off of like The French Connection, right? This is such a different performance from Gene Hackman.
Yeah, it's a lot more subdued. It's a little more angst filled. But we'll get to that later in tonight's stream. Don't want to give away the story,
No. But we're going to be talking about The Conversation.
Just for the audience, what have you deemed this month? I know it's a short month, but what have you deemed this month?
Oh, this is Government Conspiracies Month.
Or maybe alternatively, Big Brother Month.
Or Big Brother Month works too. I think if we had done 3 weeks, we would have thrown in Blowout. Then it would have been a Government Conspiracy Month. But yeah, with these two, I would say Big Brother Month is more apt.
All right, for sure. But before we get into topics for discussion, let's do a little catch up.
Well, things are going good on my end. It's Christmas, so that means work is insane. Which is fine. I get paid more money this time of the year, which is totally fine. But mainly just been working. Cinemigos, we just released our Dirty Harry episode. So that's been fun talking about that this week. We got what are we doing? I think next week, this coming up week, we're going to be releasing our The Warriors episode. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be I think people are really going to enjoy that conversation. That was a really good one. I've been introducing the guys to some of these great classics like Dirty Harry, Fistful of Dollars, and we got some good episodes coming up for the rest of the December and going into the new year. So I'm really excited for what we're doing over there. Let's see, we got what else am I doing over here? Mainly just been when I'm able to, I've just been kind of watching some movies here and there. Obviously I watched The Conversation. I just watched a film that's been on my list for a long time from 1939, Gunga Din, which is one of the big inspirations for Indiana Jones. So I really enjoyed that. And what else did I do? Oh yeah, I've been playing a new game called Hogwarts Legacy, which is it's essentially set in the world of Harry Potter. Although it's not like set during the time of the books, it's set in some other period of that world, and it's pretty cool. I've been really enjoying that because I remember the big controversy with that. It's like, oh, you want to support J.K. Rowling and her transphobic thoughts? I'm like, I could give two fucks about what she says. It's like, is the game good? Okay, it is. Then I don't give a fuck. It's like, yeah, people are so stupid sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Just some people are, you just can't help stupid sometimes. Uh,
The only thing is like, as long as like what I'm enjoying is not going towards like some sort of you know pedophilic thing, then I'm
yeah,
good. As long as it's not supporting some sort of pedophile or pedophile
mm,
ring, then I'm in. It's like, come on. Or I guess if it's not like some sort of demonic worship or something, other like stipulation I would have. But
mm,
yeah, that's about it.
indeed. Yeah, it's such a weird shift um, for that, because J.K. Rowling, she's no conservative-minded traditionalist. Um,
No.
but she's one of those rare breeds that just recognizes reality. Um, and during like I want to say the ramp up, either the ramp up. It was not quite the peak of like the whole like trans kind of like hysteria. It was definitely like the ramp up to it. She
Yeah.
just plainly came out and stated facts by saying men are men, women are women. Trans men or trans women aren't women. And then like that and that was the kickoff of like kind of that side's civil war against one another.
Yeah. And she's a liberal, but she's not a
Yeah.
crazy person. Yeah, it's like yeah, I might like these things over here, but I'm not a this is
Hmm.
fiction, and and so yes, and she would know because she
Hmm.
writes fiction, so she it's kind of yeah, you know what she doesn't care about is whatever these people are saying because what is she gonna do? She's made probably billions of dollars at this
Right.
point now with uh, selling like all the licensing
Hmm.
she's done for Harry Potter
Yeah.
because those movies hit like really like movies were gangbusters. Maybe not the Fantastic Beasts
Hmm.
stuff so much, but you have the Harry Potter land at Universal
Hmm.
Studios, and dude, you're she's
Yeah.
doing just fine. So you person with your purple hair and whatever else you got going on, screaming at the top of your lungs to the sky at J.K. Rowling, go for
Yeah.
it
No, she
because she
does. She
doesn't.
does, and not. She does not give two fucks.
Yeah, it's like, see, guys, like do what we do. If you're pissed off at somebody and you don't like their stance on something, instead of making a spectacle out of it online, just do the silent thing where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to support that person or their product or whatever, and you kind of just
Yeah, you just
do
do it
that.
and not make that huge thing. I mean, when Starbucks had like their whole like, oh, let's have a conversation. I mean, this is so funny that we keep bringing stuff up about conversations, but but
we're
but
about the conversation. We're talking about
the
conversation.
with the conversations. Let's have a
Drink
conversation
every
about a conversation about a conversation that
today.
we'll have about a conversation. But yeah, the Starbucks whole like, oh, let's have a conversation about race relations. As as you're ordering your caramel macchiato. It's like, no, that's some bullshit.
You know what I don't do at the coffee shop is talk to a whole bunch
Right,
of
exactly.
people. I would get my stuff and get the
Yeah, I
fuck
like
out of there.
specific business when I go to a coffee shop. Get my coffee and go, or get my coffee and then if I have to do some work, or if I'm meeting somebody, just quietly, at my own table or whatever, do me and just mind my own bits.
The only time I might be having a conversation with like anybody, if I'm going to a fucking bar or something, some sort of like social setting, like okay, then
Right,
let's have a conversation.
because a coffee shop / cafe isn't conducive to intersocial uh, interactions, as opposed to a bar where you're playing darts or you're playing pool, or you're watching the game and like, oh god, I can't believe Marcus fumbled again. It's like, yeah, I know, what a piece of shit. I know, right? I hate the same guy you do. Let's be friends. Did we just come best friends?
Yes.
But
and here he is talking about his thoughts on transgenders.
Like race relations.
It's like,
but
what?
yeah, but coming back to it, it's like, but when that happened, I was like, all right, I'm just not gonna drink Starbucks coffee anymore, and I found alternative means. I started making my own coffee at home and saving crap ton of money. Let's just put that out there. Not having to pay like $5 for an iced coffee, because I'm not that fancy. I'm a simple guy. I don't get like lattes or Americanas or whatever. I'm a simple iced coffee guy. And so I could do this at home, and a lot of the times they don't make it right. Like they don't, or at least they don't make it to like my exact taste. And even like even though I go to this, like before, I would go to like one particular Starbucks. They know me, they know my order, but it's always just not, exactly how I want it. And I mean, I'm not saying that the coffee shops or whatever, have to always cater to you, but a place that you frequent often, they should understand by after multiple visits. I mean, I knew like the baristas behind the counter and everything, and I'd be like, oh hey, and I shout them up by name. And so I'm just saying, is all. But again, I didn't crawl, I didn't go out there and put it out on my social medias talking about like, oh, I'm never drinking Starbucks coffee again, and like kind of virtue signaling the opposite direction. I just did it. I just went out and stopped drinking Starbucks coffee, and I didn't have to make a big thing about it, and I didn't have to.
You didn't handcuff yourself to the door of Starbucks trying to stop everyone else from enjoying their coffee.
Or super gluing themselves to the counter, like, oh, and I'm as a sci-fi guy, it pains me to have to say, who's that actor? He's been in a lot of stuff, but particularly in Star Trek, he played Zephyr Cochrane in the Star Trek First Contact.
Oh, shit. I know you're talking about. I'm forgetting his.
I'm looking it up real fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, that guy, like a freaking lunatic. He recently, it was during the pandemic. Oh, James Cromwell. Yeah, him, like, he fucking.
That's right.
Glued himself to the counter as like a sign as an environmental protest.
I would have ripped that motherfucker's hands off the goddamn counter, and I wouldn't have cared. It's like, dude, get the fuck out of here.
I mean, like, and as much as he has a special place in my heart, as a genre actor, in one of my favorite franchises, it's like, I didn't go that route. I didn't go like, say how like, oh, Starbucks are a bunch of assholes, and let me just drink my coffee. I just did it. I just stopped going to Starbucks, and I didn't make a big thing of it, and I still don't. I mean, other than right now where I'm kind of explaining, but other than that, like you can go on my socials, you can go on on my pages, and you'll see like I'm not crowing about it. I just did it.
Yeah, that's and that's the thing is like when you actually believe in something, you don't just shout about it online. You actually do something about it. You're not a politician, Andy. You actually do something about it. It's like,
Right,
um,
exactly.
but yeah, just God. It's funny you talking about like a lot of times they didn't even make my coffee right. It's like it reminded me of that moment in Pulp Fiction where Jules and Vincent are they're what was Tarantino's character name in that scene? But essentially, like they're drinking that coffee. It's like this super fancy coffee. It's like, God damn, like this is some nice coffee. I was expecting some sort of like taster's choice. So you got me here with the gourmet shit. It's like, shut the fuck up, Jules. It's like, of course I get the good coffee because my wife always buys shit. You chose to go for the gourmet coffee,
I mean,
Andy.
not really. I mean, every once in a while, yeah, sure. I'll break out the grinder and do the whole bit. But my my everyday driver, I admittedly, I just drink, the freeze dried stuff.
You mean you don't buy that fancy those fancy coffee beans that are shit out of some like cat in the mountain like in the mountains of like the Andes mountains?
Well, first it's what is it? It's Indonesia, and it's called kopi luwak.
Yeah, it's that's right. Okay, sorry, I missed that. I thought it was South America,
Yeah,
not Indonesia.
it's from London. Like what either like one of the Indonesian islands. But yeah, it's called kopi luwak. It's specific coffee bean that's eaten by a cat-like creature called the luwak. And this the whatever, for whatever reason, it doesn't completely digest it, and it's excreted excreted out its butthole, and then allowed to ferment a little bit, and it gets that's where it gets its rich flavor, I guess.
What in the
I know,
who
right?
in the
Who
fuck
thought that
decided?
it's like, oh, this cat-like thing shitted out coffee beans, so I'm gonna make coffee out of it. I don't know.
God,
But
who
yeah, but you
experimented?
have to wonder like how people figured shit out. It's like how did you know? How do you know that cream and milk, and then and just kind of stirring it up for like a couple of hours will make butter, and then when like you take that butter and then you apply it to like meat, it makes it more delicious. And like how did you figure out like if you take grains of wheat and grind it down to a powder and then add water, you're able to make bread. You know, it's rather it's if you really think about all of the kind of conventions in our lives, someone figured that shit out,
That's why I said we stand on the shoulders of
right?
giants, Andy, because people experimented with shit over
Sometimes literally
the
shit.
course of yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Who thought of like, wow, those coffee beans don't look like they digested. Let's pull them out of the shit and we'll wash them off and we'll make
I
coffee
bet
out
I
of it.
bet I bet it was a
What the
survival
fuck?
situation, right? What
Had
is
to
it?
have
What is
been.
the
It's like, hey, god damn, this is the best coffee I've ever had. It's like, are you just saying that because you're dying?
right? It's
Or
like
because
it's like when you haven't eaten anything all day, anything tastes delicious. Um, but what is
yeah.
it? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Good lord. I it's like I'm so curious. Because I'm
Right.
not a coffee drinker, but that coffee is, because I know it's like super expensive. It's like one of the most
Yeah, I
expensive
mean, yeah, I
coffees
mean, it's
out there,
not
right?
quite, like saffron, which is the same price as gold.
Are you shitting? Is that?
Yeah, per
Are you
ounce. Yeah,
shitting
per
me?
ounce.
Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah.
Where does saffron come from?
I forget, some plant. I think the Indians came across it first.
The price of gold.
But it must be really, but it really must make things delicious because it's like because the Indian diet is practically vegan.
Yeah,
So that saffron really must make vegetables taste good.
must be. Jesus. Oh man.
Oh, it comes from a flower.
I thought that it was like some sort of plant or flower
Yeah.
or something. It's like, but it's like super hard to like get, right?
Yeah, I think it's the labor because it's like these little like I forget what they're called, but it's like these really tiny, almost like delicate. What is that word? Threads. There you go. Threads. Like these, like kind of like thread-like things. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
think there's a way to mechanically harvest the saffron. So I think it's still mostly a hand-picked
and
deal.
I see, I see. Yeah, that will always like end up like costing a lot more.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're not drinking shit coffee, literally or figuratively. Uh, saffron. Well, actually, I have had stuff with saffron in it. Saffron is pretty good, but yeah, I didn't know it was. I knew it was expensive, but I didn't know it was that expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. By ounce, it's comparative to gold.
Jesus, that's nuts.
Isn't it though?
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of nuts,
Well, hold on, just real quick.
oh, you
Just
haven't.
really
You have,
quickly
so,
for
sorry.
me. As for me, after last week's stream, I caught laryngitis. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but that's also why I'm sucking down some tea. I mean, I'm over it for sure, and luckily it was only contained within my throat. But yeah, of course, like anything, like any sort of respiratory infection, the cough was the last thing to go. Um, but it's manageable except for when I get coughing fits, and
Oh yeah.
it's because like it's I really it's because of an irritation, because like I feel it in my throat, like like that feeling when like you kind of choke on a piece of popcorn, like not like the fluffy part, but like the membrane part, and that
Oh,
one
it's
little
the
piece,
worst.
yeah, like kind of like feels like it's stuck in your throat. That's what it feels like for me.
Oh,
And so yeah, something, yeah, I'll be hit pretty hard with it. So yeah, like even just this past Sunday, I was hit with a coughing fit, and so I had to excuse myself a few times out of service so I wouldn't cause a disruption. Um, which did hamper our plans. We did have a recording session for an episode planned, but it got pushed back because I sounded like an 80-year-old grandpa. Uh,
hey yo,
I
there's
know.
hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's like it was like very breathy and like kind of like a whisper. So we had to push it back. Over the weekend, uh, one of my good and longtime friends, he got married over the weekend, so that was fun. Got to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while. And a good time was had by all.
Nice.
Yeah, and then yesterday I went out to Fullerton to go volunteer for an hour or so at the Samaritan's Purse organization. It was one of their days where people would go and sort boxes from their Operation Christmas Child project with the shoe boxes, and
All
so
right.
we all the shoe boxes that we collected came to that distribute like that processing center, and volunteers like myself went and we took out we took the shoes, we categorized them, boy, girl, and then also by age, and then we were like the final quality check to make sure everything was inside the box that should be inside the box, or take out things that shouldn't be in the box, um, and then categorize them from boys to girls, but then also in age ranges. So we had 2 to 4, 5 to 9, and 10 to 14.
Nice.
Yeah, and our and then again, like volunteers like me, our hands are the last ones to handle the boxes themselves before they're given out and distributed to the children. So and the boxes that we processed, they're headed off to the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah, it was cool, and we went on the day that was the media day. Uh, so I got to be within 20 yards of Franklin Graham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Great. Oh, that's cool.
yeah, he was there. He gave a little talk, and also Pastor Greg Laurie of Harvest Church. I don't.
Okay, I've heard his name. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know if you've heard. Did you hear about that movie, Jesus Revolution?
No.
Well, that's basically like kind of like his uh, conversion story.
Okay.
Pastor Greg Laurie. He started a church. He's actually he was actually mentored and discipled under Greg Smith of Calvary Chapel fame. The
Okay.
church that started out in the OC, and now they have like multiple satellite churches.
Yeah.
One being in Thousand Oaks here, relatively close to us, as well as like some that are in like the Inland Empire, like Chino Hills. But yeah, it was cool. Pastor Greg Laurie came and gave a prayer over the boxes. And Franklin Graham came and just gave a quick word about the importance of Operation Christmas Child, and
That's awesome,
yeah.
man. Yeah, like I said, you're always doing something like really awesome like that to as a charity work,
Mhm.
whether it be for the homeless or the less fortunate, and I think it's awesome.
Thank you. But just trying to follow the commission.
Yeah, no, I think you do a great job of that.
Thank you. I try.
You do more with your hands than some people do with their able hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I was with my friend and his wife, who like my friend's wife. She's kind of like she's more of a formal volunteer with Samaritan's Purse. And
Mhm.
when we first got there, when they were like kind of trying to get us into like different workstations, one of the volunteers there, seeing as she never met me before, she was kind of concerned of what my capabilities would be. And
Mhm.
then, but my friend like quickly piped up. It's like, oh no, just throw him anywhere. Andy can do anything. He ties fishing knots and stuff. So,
Yeah,
and so
it's he'll figure it
yeah,
out.
so it's just like having like my own like advocacy group / like cheerleading section. You know.
Yeah, I always joke with with people who they don't really know you that much, but it's like where we kind of forget that you don't have hands because you're so capable with everything, and it's like when it comes to stuff where it's like you kind of do need that mobility. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, Andy. It's like, let me
I know. It's
open
like,
that.
yeah, like several times, I'd be struggling with something, and I was like, and I'd say like, hey, can I get some help here? And then they're like, they give like this inquisitive look and be like, why? And then
Yeah.
and then I kind of have to go like, I have to like raise up my hands like, hey, and they're like, oh, right, 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 right.
Right, your hands. Let's help out there.
Yeah, I mean, just particularly when it comes to like more like dexterous things or things that require like simultaneous manipulation.
Yeah.
That's really my only Achilles heel.
Oh, opening up cans and bottles. Like I try to do that for you when I can. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Fuck you. You
Yeah,
can't do
yeah.
that.
I go, hey, can a little help? It's like, and you're like, why? I'm just like,
But it's funny.
yeah. So
But
that was my weekend.
cool, man. Well, yours is definitely much more. I don't know, fulfilling than mine.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, yeah. The wedding was really good because what is that? My friend, like, we both came up under our pastor back when we were young kids. And our pastor, he was the officiant for the wedding, and so he actually he got choked up um, while initially delivering his ceremonial message.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
he's
Okay.
just because he's known my friend for a very long time, and so that was really nice to see.
It was kind of like it almost felt like a family affair then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like members of our church like pitched in to do like one of the sisters in my church. She like volunteered to basically be the wedding coordinator and like and planned everything and made sure. And honestly, it was one of the most efficient weddings I've ever been to. There was no like real big hangups or like issues. And so
That's great.
yeah, we had it at our church, and so a lot of our members, even after everything like shut down, we like jumped in to help like clean up the banquet hall, which is actually the chapel for our KM. And so it
Right.
was Saturday, and so we had to get it cleaned up, and exactly how the KM has it in time for the next morning's service. So yeah, it's just
Yeah. It's
kind of a
great.
beautiful thing, to uh, see like the body, the entire body of Christ, and just it really is it really is a family.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I think that's great, and yeah, you have a very tight knit community at your church.
Sure do.
Well, what should we tackle first, buddy? What do you want to talk about first?
Um. Well, let's go with the shift from within Hollywood. As it seems that the big blockbuster franchise is kind of losing steam and leaving room for the rise of the auteur.
Yeah, yeah. We've seen how I think when this started to fail was probably right around 20, probably at the time of the quote unquote pandemic of 2020, because that was just so many things changed that year. And Mark, well, obviously, like, we had all these, like, Marvel movies for the and I would say mostly being very successful. Like, yeah, they were big blockbuster productions, but they also made a lot of money. So it was kind of like it was a good return on investment. But after that, I think like something started to shift because, well, one, the Marvel Studios, which is, essentially Disney, they started to put out a bunch of shit. You have movies that probably came out a little too late to capture like what they were supposed to capture. You have movies that have terrible writing or bad casting or not about an actual good story. We've had a bunch of those. And I think overall, like, especially this year, the blockbuster epic is not doing very well. One in particular, where when Mission Impossible doesn't do well, and that they spent a shit ton of money on it, it didn't really perform all that well. Which is, to be honest, I think it's a great movie. Like, I really enjoyed it.
Right,
I
right.
bought it.
Yeah,
That's how much I liked it.
yeah. I
And I
eventually
actually went to.
watched the most recent one, and yeah, like, um, it wasn't as, in my opinion, it wasn't as good as, say, Rogue Nation or
Or
Fallout, or
Fallout.
hell, even I think the one that really kind of ushered in this era of Mission Impossible, which is Ghost Protocol.
I Oh man, I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe it's not quite as good as those, but it's still
Yeah,
really
it's
solid.
still solid.
Obviously, it's
Yeah,
building up.
don't get my words twisted here. I still really enjoyed the movie, but it just didn't hit like those previous entries in the franchise.
Yeah, I essentially own the entire franchise right now, as of right now, and I that movie did not do well. I don't know about the numbers on Scorsese's new film that came out this year, Flowers of the Blood Moon. I know the return on Napoleon right now is not doing great. I mean, it was kind of like almost like the last gasp this year was Oppenheimer and Barbie. Both those movies did really well. But yeah,
Right.
like, essentially all the Pixar and Marvel movies that have come out like within the last year or two have done terribly.
Yeah. But
Uh,
even, well,
and
I
it makes me
wouldn't,
wonder.
because I think we're still talking about different things. Like when we're talking about Oppenheimer, and I even give credit to the, even though I haven't seen it, but from what I understand, like I still would give the credit to the director of the Barbie movie, and I would say that those would be more like auteur movies. Um,
You
yeah,
think so?
I know because the Barbie movie pushes so much of the message, but I still think that it would still be categorized as an auteur movie because the well the what is it, the definition. Hold on, I just had it.
Oh, you're right, because you have like a bit like a franchise.
Yes.
There's no like Oppenheimer
Yeah,
like
I mean,
franchise. You know, it's not.
could Barbie eventually become a franchise? Sure. Right now, as it stands, as a standalone movie, it's an auteur movie. Just auteur, a filmmaker whose
You're
personal influence and artistic control over a movie are so great that the filmmaker is regarded as the author of the movie.
Okay, all right.
Or an auteur. An auteur is an artist with a distinctive approach, usually a film director whose filmmaking control is so unbounded and personal that the director is likened to the author of the film. Yada yada
You're right. But okay, based off like what you're seeing, then
yada.
those movies did really well.
Yeah.
A lot of people came out to the theaters. I mean, that was a whole thing this summer with
Yeah.
those two movies. And there were some people who went out and saw both of them. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a whole thing, and it wasn't like a forced thing. It was something that like happened naturally. There's like I mean, yes, Barbie is it is a thing that people know of. It is it's a brand, if you will. But it like you said, yeah, you're right. It isn't like an auteur experience. Oppenheimer obviously is too. And the stuff that's been part of a franchise has done terribly. So I think people are tired. I think they're tired of the grand spectacle, and I think they're wanting something different. I don't know about like I said, Napoleon just came out recently. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. I don't know what Scorsese's movie is doing exactly. But there's something where I feel like we're gonna start getting a big shift in Hollywood, just like we did back in like the late '60s, going into the '70s. We talked about that we covered Cleopatra and how that was the movie that really broke the back of the studio system. It's like we cannot do this anymore. Spending the
Yeah, the
kind of spending the
huge budgets, the over bloated,
grand
yeah,
spectacles, and and to be honest, people were tired of it. These like grand
yeah, this,
timepieces. Now, that movie is good, and the movies like that movie are good for the most part. I mean, there's some bad ones, but like for the most part, they're all pretty good. But people were clamoring for something different at that time, and they were tired of what was being put out. And I think that obviously kind of got the ball rolling, and you started to see more of those like avant-garde films, and that's where you get Easy Rider, Midnight Cowboy, Vanishing Point, um, Cool Hand Luke, stuff like that. And it's just completely different from the and you kind of like in the '70s was a big time for like the exploitation movement, for whatever you have like your women in prison films, you have your black exploitation, you have your road movies, and kind of like their lower budgets, and directors are doing are kind of given carte blanche to just do whatever crazy cheap project they want to do, like The French Connection or Taxi Driver, um, stuff like that. It's kind of Steven Spielberg with like Duel. They're just kind of given the reins to do something crazy with it, and there's some really interesting cinema that was, and then that kind of died out, and I think like the death knell in that started with Jaws and like how big of a blockbuster that ended up becoming, and then you kind of move into the blockbuster era of the '80s. Not necessarily that. I mean, I guess you could say that there are franchises
right,
per se, like Star Wars.
but
That also
franchises were few and far between.
right, like, but
So,
you get
but the
Indiana.
concept of the blockbuster was definitely a thing. You had like, your big, yeah, your big names, and your summer tent poles, that sort of thing. But like
Yeah,
the franchise was few and far between. Like, I mean, even Rambo was, I think, was a surprise franchise. And it wasn't
yeah.
even like a really blockbuster sort of thing. I mean, yeah, it had a pretty big name in Sylvester Stallone, but
Well, he became a big name because when Rocky came out, then that came out of fucking
right,
nowhere for people because no one was expecting that. Um, yeah, like I said, it was so you go from like the late '60s into the '70s. You have like kind of like the kind of the avant-garde exploitation movies, which kind of like, and it's kind of the rise of guys like Spielberg, Coppola, um,
but
yeah, and all Lucas. Those are the guys that kind of rose to power in that time. Scorsese. they rose to power in this time, and that you ended up getting what became like these big blockbusters. Um, and so that led into the 80s, which you kind of a continuation off of these big movies that those guys created. Not necessarily Scorsese. Scorsese kind of stayed away from that. He kind of does his own thing. But you have Lucas, who obviously continues the Star Wars franchise into the 80s. You have Spielberg, who created multiple big blockbuster events, or continued a franchise. If what the idea of what the franchise would become, or you have like Stallone, who kind of created his own thing with Rambo, and obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger became kind of like a household name in that era. And that kind of died down in the early 90s and led into what is the indie movement with like independent directors, which is kind of like recapturing that exploitation movement of the 70s because of guys like Scorsese, Robert Rodriguez, Richard Linklater, guys like that who are kind of harkening back to that 70s era.
Right,
and
all this is to say
that
that
we
it's it's nothing. There's nothing new under the sun. So it's
no,
all a
that's not,
cycle. Because like like the studios
yeah.
will have like their big grandiose like blockbuster, big production things, and then people will slowly start becoming burnt out on it. Actually, yeah, I just saw a video by Dave Cullen talking about, or was it Razor Fist? It might have been both, but they're talking about how
I know Razor had one about like the
right the
superhero
superhero
fatigue.
fatigue.
That was
Yeah,
great.
and it was just like it's a natural thing because just like westerns, more and more like as they kept like pumping that well, of westerns, more and more crappier versions of the westerns started coming out. And then which eventually led to the implosion of the genre. So it's not a bug, it's a feature of constantly going back to that well, of superhero movies. There's only so many unique and interesting ways you could tell that story. I mean, I think one of the best, again, in my opinion, is Captain America: Winter Soldier,
Dude, yeah, that's a
because it was a
fucking
superhero
masterpiece.
movie, but it was also a spy thriller. You know, and then
Well, and
you also
we
had this great,
yeah,
and it was also a great transitional moment for the character of Captain America. Where he's no longer this symbol of a nation, and he's transitioning into more of like more of a how do I put this?
he's not becoming like this idealistic guy. He's starting to see like,
Well,
oh,
yeah,
there's people who I've been
right,
defending have kind of been
right.
corrupted.
He's no longer a symbol of a nation, he still remains a symbol for righteousness, because he doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily change who he is as a person, but he still fights for what he thinks is right. He just no longer
have you?
does it for a governmental body or governmental entity. He essentially goes private sector. Especially as you go into like Avengers: Age of Ultron, and then Captain America: Civil War. He's essentially someone who used to work in the government, and then he goes private sector, and then he's starting to see all of the flaws, or kind of the restrictions that come with being in the governmental system.
This is like where one of the there was three big movies that influenced that this Captain America: Winter Soldier. It was 3 Days of the Condor, The Parallax View, and I think Marathon Man was the other one. And 3 Days of the Condor is a huge influence on that film. Well, one, they got Robert Redford, who is the star of 3 Days
Right.
of the Condor, and yeah, it's about a guy who he works for the government, and then the government turns on him, and he starts to see the corruption of the people he's been working for, and essentially ends up being he's an agent for them who ends up being railroaded
Right.
against, and he turns against them, and he's trying, but he has not changed as far as like his morals go, but it's more of like he realizes he has to go after
Right. Because it's a
because
great inflection.
his
It's a really
morals.
great inflection point for the character of Captain America because in 1945 he had no doubt in his mind that he was fighting for the good guys, that the America was the good guys, and he had to stop the evil Germans, um, because the Red Skull was uniquely evil, in that sense. And so so he had no doubts in his mind that he was fighting for the good guys. But as he comes into this new century, he's starting to see things have changed, or maybe he's starting to realize I never really was fighting for the good guys in the very first place in World War I or World War II. And so
Yeah,
that's such a powerful inflection point for a character. I mean, let alone even a person to tackle, but just as a character wise, as such, is particularly for Captain America, because he is a national symbol. Um, so for him to have that kind of that shadow of a doubt is very powerful, and I think it works so well for that character. But unfortunately, Disney, or Disney generally and Marvel specifically, for some reason didn't continue that uh, uh, line of thinking. Not necessarily specifically the individual struggle that Captain America had went through, but for their other characters to make them more interesting. You know, I mean, I think the closest thing we got, and within that's been phase 3, was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, when they brought in Sam Raimi to do kind of like a superhero horror, like zombie horror thing.
oh, it was yeah, which I liked. It's like they're trying to do something
Right, but I
different.
mean, think about like when Captain America: The Winter Soldier came out, and then when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out. That's at least at least 6 years,
Yeah,
something like
something
that.
like that.
But like they didn't like they allowed for much character exploration in their other characters. Um, well, I mean, yeah, I mean Iron Man does, I guess, a little in
Well, I would say like I would say like for the most part, like that, you know, the Infinity saga, the Infinity Stone saga, all of those movies are really solid. Like even like the worst. Well, I mean, I never saw Captain Marvel, and I'm still not gonna watch it. But besides that one, like the worst film is still halfway decent. You know,
yes,
it's
yeah,
not
even
it's
Iron
not
Man. Yeah,
bad.
okay, so you haven't seen. Would you consider Iron Man 3 not the best?
I like Iron Man 3 actually.
Okay. Since you haven't
I would
seen Captain Marvel, which one of the other entries in the MCU would you consider not strong?
I don't think that Thor 2 does the
Okay.
best.
Okay, I see.
I think they had interesting ideas that they didn't fully
Right.
flesh out, and I don't think the who's the other one that like possibly Iron Man 2 is maybe not the best either.
Okay.
Like other than that, like I think I mean they're still rewatchable. Like they're still decent, but like compared to all the other stuff that they put out, yeah, I would say like
Right.
um,
Yeah,
those
because
films.
I think yeah, but for Iron Man 2, I think it was just over bloated, and like they couldn't decide who was going to be the bad guy, in either Ivan Vanko or Justin Hammer.
Yeah.
And I think and I think it should have been one or the other, and like one should have been the master. I mean, it eventually panned out that Ivan Vanko was the mastermind, to kind of playing Justin Hammer, but um, I think a more interesting, or yeah, I just wish the villains weren't as compelling, um, you know, as opposed to the first Iron Man, where you have Obadiah Stane, who was like a surrogate father to Tony, and you have like that kind of betrayal of the character. I think that was
that
much
was
more, yeah, that was much heavier than this guy whose dad worked with Tony's dad, and he was actually a double agent and blah blah blah, and he was sent to Siberia, and he has all the, and then he has this long festering hatred for the Starks. I just don't think is compelling.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, like every genre definitely goes through that fatigue. And I think like what'll happen is it'll stop within, I would say, pretty soon, because like they're losing their ass. And what's going to end up happening, we're going to get a resurgence maybe 15, 20 years from now. I mean, because at the time, let's say like I just talked about this on our Cinema Egos episode on Fistful of Dollars, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it here too. That movie revitalized the Western.
What revitalized the Western?
Italy.
Oh, the spaghetti
Fistful
Westerns.
of Dollars. The spaghetti, that particular movie revitalized the Western, and the spaghetti Western popular, and that's where you end up getting a lot of our famous actors going to Italy to work with guys like Corbucci and Leone to do these films, and made it more gritty and like, kind of interesting, more violent, and then that kind of died out, and then the Western was kind of revitalized back again, and for a short time in the 70s, there was a few different like 70s ones that were inspired by the spaghetti Westerns, and then revitalized again in the 90s. And there's been a few sprinkles here and there. The Western really has not come back in the way. Maybe that's not like a great example.
Right. Well, I mean,
sci-fi.
Well, sci-fi
has become big in a way.
Yeah, they become more like character studies. Well, I mean, the most famous I'm thinking about is 3:10 to Yuma. That movie's so good.
Movie, yeah. Both the original and the remake are splendid. I can't choose between which one I like more. I like both of them.
I have a little recency bias, so I might give it to the remake. But yeah, again, both like the original, I have no problem with either.
But does the remake have like a cool song at the theme song?
Yeah. Yeah, I just think. I just give the edge to the remake, because there's such better developed characters. Even like the side characters are really well like kind of fleshed out.
I will say that that's kind of the same thing we talked about with both Magnificent Seven films, like the original and the remake. Is like each iteration of that story, like it feels like the original is great, like it is a classic. I love it, but I actually really like the remake as well, because it does flesh out, it feels like there's more of a reason for there to be the Magnificent Seven. Like it gives an idea of like who the villain is, and why they're doing what they're doing, and why our characters need to stop him.
Right. Yeah, and and what the remake does or added was that personal element for the main character. You know, because
His connection to the villain who had done something to
yeah,
him.
exactly. Which which gives the main character all the more reason to form to join up and form that the posse. As
What I thought, what Antoine Fuqua did with that, like I think he was also borrowing some elements from the spaghetti western, because particularly like the Great Silence,
Mhm.
because there's something similar that is done to Silence, which ultimately ends up, where he's no longer able to talk,
Mhm.
but it's something similar, like where like it was like he was hung or like his throat was cut,
Mhm.
and it like in the Great Silence, it essentially destroyed his vocal cord, so he couldn't talk.
Mhm.
In this one, obviously, that didn't happen, but
Right, but he
it's
like
still.
yeah the physical scar is also an emotional scar.
Mm,
Yeah, the like the scar that was left behind by the noose, on Denzel Washington character's throat. Even though it's a physical scar, it's also an emotional scar.
yeah, the other improvement is he's not named
Yes.
Chris.
Oh my gosh. You can't you can't be a convincing cowboy and be named Chris.
Uh, that's still just like every time I watch that movie, I'm like, fuck, that's right, Chris.
Chris.
Of all the names you could have chose, you chose
I know,
Chris,
right?
Chris the cowboy.
Yeah, Chris.
Um,
Chris doesn't work. Sam,
because it doesn't
Joe.
match Bill Brenner's look either. Like he's not a Chris. Like there's got to be some, like especially because he's a Creole guy.
Right.
Like there's got to be some sort of like make it French sounding or something like because I mean the Creole are like part French. Like maybe he's like Pierre or like
Or make him
um
A Martine.
yeah Martin something. It's just oh my god Chris.
Chris.
But
Chris the
yeah
Cajun.
I just
Oh.
yeah but going back to our point though is that we're I think like the big franchises, the big blockbuster stuff, like it's coming to an end because I think people are kind of tired of they don't need to see like the sixth or seventh like advantage,
Iteration.
because it yeah because the thing is like it's not I would say like horror is kind of an outlier, but like even in that case, like the one of the big things was number a couple of years ago we had the new Halloween trilogy that came out,
Mm-hmm.
and the first one was in 2018. That re the that one from 2018 was really good. Then we got the two sequels are not good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like now like they have like the new Exorcist trilogy that they're trying to come out with,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a revitalization of that franchise. And uh, people are hit or miss on that first one. Like I don't know if I'm gonna see it at all, but the we're seeing how some of these smaller studios that are not Disney, Warner Brothers, what have you, they're having a lot of success just because they're not like necessarily making huge investments. Maybe they're only spending like at most like $30 million, but they are making a profit off of what they're making. Especially like A24, Blumhouse. I think there's like another like kind of small studios out there that's been working on stuff, and they're making these. Some of the films are not my cup of tea, which is fine. But they're also making some really interesting films that have become like super popular. Like A24 has put out some really cool stuff with some of their horror stuff that they've put out. We got Ex Machina, the Green Room, all sorts of like little stuff that they're putting out there, and yeah, like I've seen some of like the trailers. I'm like, okay, that is something I'm not gonna watch. I'm not interested in that, and that's okay. You know, but for somebody for a certain niche, like that's, and they probably only spent maybe at most like $5-6 million on that project, and they're probably gonna make their money back. Or if they don't, it's like it's not a huge investment for them. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that didn't work, but our $30 million investment over here made 90, so we're okay. It kind of balances it out, and they're overall they're making money, and I think that's what we're gonna. I think that unless these big studios start to see, like, you know what, like we need to make transition, and it's gonna hurt because they have to kind of maybe uh, downsize to a degree, and kind of revitalize themselves in a new way. Uh, I don't know, or maybe they go out of business. Who knows? I mean, like that would be kind of sad to see, like Universal or um, like Warner Brothers go out of business, but because they've been around for so fucking long. But
But yeah, it's kind of
who knows?
yeah, it's a little pitiable because these studios like they forgot their own history.
Well, they shot themselves in the
Yeah,
foot. That's the problem.
because they forgot their history. They forgot they forgot their own history. What, like, what made them successful, what didn't. You know what the trend. That you can't. They forgot that you can't just ride a trend. A trend like all the way. A trend's eventually gonna patter out. The longer it goes. And they've known this,
Yeah,
like, because the example of like westerns, like, they didn't learn their lesson. They thought that they could just milk the hit superhero thing forever, and nothing was ever was it was always going to return on investment. But again, they didn't study their own history, or they brought in people who were not even interested, who were not even interested to bother themselves to learn about such history. Um, to prevent such a thing. I mean, I think, with the exception of maybe, okay, with the exception of the, because it's tying up a loose end, Spider-Man No Way Home, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe should have capped it off right then and there, and just been put on the shelf for a few years.
yeah, I agree. I think like had we like, because they had put out so many films and it all like kind of wrapped up
Mm-hmm.
really nicely. What would have been great is to, okay, let's, everyone is wanting more, but let's put it on the shelf for a couple years. Let's maybe like for like the next few years we'll pour ourselves into, Disney had a bunch of different properties. Let's use this talent in maybe like let's put out a couple good like Star Wars things. Although obviously that didn't happen, but yeah, maybe like taking a second, it's like let it breathe. It's like we need to decompress after Endgame,
Right. And
and then
and instead of like, and yeah, allowing some time uh, for it to kind of cool off a bit and take a breather, and then revisiting certain ideas like Sam Wilson as Captain America, and not going right into it, and then weirdly having him doubt his ability to be Captain America, and then eventually, like,
which is interesting. I like that aspect of it. Like he doesn't feel worthy of the
but no,
shield.
no, no, but that's not my that's not my
That's a
point though. My point is, like, because at the end of Endgame, he seemed like he was game for it. So it weirdly, when you do this TV series that makes it seem like he's unsure if he's worthy of the shield, and like him succumbing to the pressures of a black man, being the symbol for America, whatever. That shit is fucking boring to me. I would rather the franchise take like at the least 3 years off, and then come back in him fully invested in the mantle of Captain America and just kicking ass, right? And then dealing with like,
Well, I mean, okay, well, I
hmm?
see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
I don't need
think,
like
yeah.
all because like they keep trying to bring like real world stuff into in the comic book world, and I get it. You know, you have to draw on things like in our world and put them into our. You could draw on them, but don't make them like the feature of your your movie or your TV show. So that's fucking boring. And I don't want to see real life or what's perceived as real life as instead of like having a world where they still like discriminate against people. Why not just have a world where everyone's cool with each other, everyone's cool with having a black Captain America?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that because they're always talking about how we need to have better representation. Well, why don't we see like a cool black man kicking
Exactly.
ass
Yeah, not
and like
having
being
not having that self doubt and having like those like having like the pressure of like being a black man and being Captain America and and that boring shit. I just want him to if he like just go full tilt, be Captain America. Don't be like, oh, am I worthy of
exactly.
this shield? Or oh, it's so problematic with this shield because I'm a black man. And it's like that is so fucking boring, dude.
We needed Captain America to go shaft on us.
there, there you go. Yeah, because I don't want like because yeah, then you don't have those stupid cringe-worthy speeches, from Sam Wilson. Like
You
yeah,
need
exactly.
Senator. Oh, fuck that speech. It
Exactly,
sucks.
exactly. I'd rather him just be Captain America, right?
Can you just like kick
Yeah,
ass and be
exactly.
cool?
You know how you have you better representation. You be inspirational. You be the Black Captain America, okay? And you just be it. All right. And as much as I'm not in favor of the whole like mantles thing, but if you're gonna go with that route, then go with it and make him like the coolest Captain America ever. That only in the way that only a black man could. Just like the way Steve Rogers made Captain America cool in his unique way, makes Sam Wilson Captain America cool in his own way that only he can make Captain America cool. You know?
You know, I've watched like cool like lead black actors do some like awesome shit. Like we just did
I
Blade.
was just thinking that.
Wesley Snipes kicked fucking ass in that movie. It was great. You have like Shaft. Shaft's another one. Both iterations, both the Sam Jackson and the Richard Roundtree versions of Shaft are awesome. We did Fred Williamson and Boss and Derville Martin. They kick fucking up. We have I just watched Black Gun with Jim Brown. He's kind of a like in his own way is a cool kick-ass character, and it's like no one. We're not like oh my god a black man in a lead role doing something like playing this certain character. Oh my god, like who would have foreseen? Oh, it's like no, we don't give a shit. I just want to see a well-written proper. If you're going to use the character, make them cool, and I will watch it.
Yeah, precisely, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of like Korean and Japanese cinema. I watch a lot of you know exploitation films. I watch and it's like I don't fucking care who the main character. I don't care if it's a woman or a guy or whatever race. It's like just make the character cool.
Right.
If the character's cool and the story is good, I don't give a shit.
Right. I mean, just again, to kind of take it back to Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift. Like the character of Han, he's a cool character. Like
Yes, he is.
when he like when that first came out, when that movie first came out, like he like Sung Kang, the actor who plays Han, he was getting a lot of attention because you know what? He was playing a really cool character and he played it really well. Didn't matter.
I met that
And yeah,
guy.
he was like a bit of a gangster, but he was cool. He was interesting. He was mysterious. we didn't know what his backstory is, but he was cool. He was a cool character, and
Yeah.
nobody cared that he was Asian. He was just a cool character.
No, don't give a shit.
Yeah, he was just a cool character, and like it was funny because during that time, a lot of women were like, "Oh man, Sun Kang," like they were saying like, "Oh, Sun Kang is really hot." It's like, okay, and then it's like, it's not like he's like, oh, like he's like he's hot for an Asian guy. It's like no, he was just
No,
hot.
it's not.
They
That's not
found
what
they
they were
found
saying
him
at all.
attractive. Period. Not
Yes, it
not in
did.
spite of him being Asian.
Exactly. Just like it's, yeah. Where I think and plus I think a lot of people are really tired of the message. That's the other thing too. It's like just give us good stories. Uh, we don't. I think people are tired of. They have franchise. It's not just like superhero fatigue. It's franchise fatigue. Now I do hope that we do get like that last Mission Impossible film. Kind of just I want to finish the story. Um, and then after that, like I don't give a shit if like all the franchises just kind of like go away for a little while, and we go back to getting like unique stories with different characters, different stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of
sorry,
like
like I'm a big Mission Impossible fan. It's like we're almost at the end. Just let me have like just finish up the story that you were trying to finish, and like then we'll end it. And it's like I don't need it anymore.
right. I mean, and it's interesting because the Mission Impossible franchise is a unique one because as opposed to Marvel, who has I think what they had like 33 movies in like just the Infinity Saga alone, and that was within a span of
Yeah,
like 10 years. But the Mission Impossible movies, like they span 30 years, and they only have like 7.
yeah, and that's also why that the movies are fucking solid too, because they're not just like pumping one out every year. They're taking their
Right.
time with it. Now, Mission Impossible 2 is
Right.
not
It's
the
the
best.
outlier. It's the outlier.
It, that, it's flawed. I don't think it's bad. I think it's flawed. But all the other ones are damn good. Um, and I think also because why the recent one maybe didn't do as good. It's like, oh, it's a part one. Well, I'll just wait and I'll watch part one before I go to see part two. Like I think so. I think if part two comes
Mm-hmm.
out, maybe knowing that it's gonna be like kind of like the final ride, I think more people see that one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I as much as I enjoyed, Dead Reckoning Part One. Yeah, I had my issues. Like, I mean, one of the issues that I had was, um, the IMF not being a governmental organization. It just seems like an organization built off blackmail and picking up strays. How they
Mm,
because they haven't changed
okay,
because in
like that.
three because in three, Tom Cruise's character Ethan Hunt, he transitioned into being an instructor at the academy. And that's how and I know it was a very short-lived appearance, but Kerry Russell's character was his like protege.
Well, here's what I'm thinking has happened in that, since if we're going down that route, is that yeah, the IMF was a bigger organization, but as these movies have gone along, the IMF has been cut down more and more and more, to the point where yeah, now it is maybe they are kind of like this, they're picking up strays and scraps, and it's the person that's holding it together is
No,
Ethan Hunt.
no, because well, no, because even in Dead Reckoning, they retcon Ethan's induction into the IMF because he because he made it because the way it was. even Ethan says, like, because he demonstrated an understanding of, of the grift, in Grace's character, like, pickpocketing and, and confidence schemes. So, and in the and there was allusions to like him being in the same situation as Grace and like giving offered up the choice, kind of tying into the motif of Mission Impossible. Is like, oh, your mission if you choose to accept it. And so it's that, it seems like a really weird retcon to do, especially at the end of